You think you know what domination looks like? You think you've seen the most one-sided beatdown in WWE history? Think again. What happened when Brock Lesnar returned to face John Cena wasn't just a match, it was a complete and utter annihilation that left the WWE Universe in absolute shock and had John Cena questioning everything he thought he knew about professional wrestling. For over a decade, John Cena had been the untouchable golden boy of WWE, the company's poster child, the man who overcame the odds time and time again. But on this night, all of that changed in the most brutal fashion imaginable. Brock Lesnar didn't just beat John Cena, he systematically destroyed him with not one, not two, but 7 devastating F5s that left Cena broken, bloodied, and completely helpless in the center of that ring. This wasn't your typical WWE comeback story. This was Brock Lesnar sending a message that reverberated through every corner of the wrestling world, that the Beast incarnate was back, and nobody, absolutely nobody, was safe from his wrath. But here's what makes this story even more insane. The build-up to this match was unlike anything we'd ever seen before. For months, WWE had been hyping John Cena as the unstoppable force, the franchise player who could overcome any obstacle. Meanwhile, Brock Lesnar had been away from WWE, conquering the UFC heavyweight division and proving himself as one of the most legitimate fighters on the planet. When rumors started swirling about Lesnar's return, the WWE universe was split down the middle. Half believed that Cena's experience and home field advantage would carry him to victory. The other half knew that Brock's real-world fighting credentials made him a completely different kind of threat. But nobody, and I mean nobody, predicted the absolute massacre that was about to unfold. The atmosphere in the arena that night was electric with anticipation. You could feel the tension building as both superstars made their way to the ring. John Cena, with his usual confident swagger, playing to the crowd and soaking in what he thought would be another triumphant night. Then came Brock Lesnar, and the entire energy of the building shifted instantly. Lesnar looked like a man possessed. His eyes were cold, calculating, predatory. As he stepped through those ropes, you could sense that this wasn't going to be the typical back-and-forth wrestling match that fans had grown accustomed to. This was going to be something entirely different, something darker and more vicious than anything the WWE Universe had witnessed in years. The bell rang, and within seconds, it became clear that John Cena was in for the fight of his life. Brock Lesnar exploded out of his corner like a caged animal finally set free. His first move wasn't a wrestling hold or a strike, it was pure, unbridled aggression that caught Cena completely off guard. What happened next was nothing short of shocking. Lesnar grabbed Cena and effortlessly lifted him onto his shoulders for the first F5 of the night. The crowd erupted, thinking this might be a quick finish, but they had no idea what was coming. Brock didn't go for the pin. Instead, he stood over Cena's fallen body with a look that said this was just the beginning. Let me ask you this, have you ever seen John Cena look genuinely afraid in a wrestling ring? Because on this night, for the first time in his career, you could see the fear creeping into his eyes as he realized he was dealing with something he'd never encountered before. The second F5 came just minutes later, and this time, Lesnar's execution was even more brutal. He held Cena up longer, letting the anticipation build before driving him down with devastating force. The impact echoed throughout the arena, and you could hear the collective gasp from thousands of fans who couldn't believe what they were witnessing. But Brock still wasn't finished. Oh no, he was just getting started. The third F5 was where things got truly disturbing. By this point, Cena was clearly hurt, struggling to get to his feet, his usual fire and determination replaced by confusion and desperation. Any normal wrestler would have gone for the pinfall, but Lesnar was operating on a completely different level. He wasn't just trying to win a match, he was trying to prove a point. And that point was simple. John Cena, the supposed face of WWE, the man who never gave up, was nothing more than another victim waiting to be fed to the Beast incarnate. The fourth F5 had Cena writhing in pain on the mat, clutching his ribs and struggling to breathe. The referee looked concerned, and you could see officials at ringside debating whether to stop the match. But Lesnar waved them off with a dismissive gesture that sent chills down everyone's spine. He wasn't done making his statement. Here's a question for you hardcore wrestling fans. Can you name another match where a top-tier superstar like John Cena was so thoroughly dominated that he looked like a complete amateur? Drop your answers in the comments because this level of one-sided destruction was unprecedented. The fifth F5 was delivered with such force that it seemed to shake the entire ring structure. Cena's body hit the mat with a sickening thud, and for a moment, the arena fell completely silent. Even the most die-hard Cena fans were speechless, watching their hero being systematically dismantled by a force of nature they'd never seen before. But the most disturbing part wasn't the physical punishment, it was the psychological warfare. Between each F5, Lesnar would circle Cena like a predator toying with its prey. He would smile that cold, calculating smile and gesture to the crowd as if to say, "This is your hero? This is what you've been cheering for?" The sixth F5 was arguably the most vicious yet. Lesnar lifted Cena higher than ever before, held him there for what felt like an eternity, and then drove him down with such impact that several fans at ringside actually turned away in horror. medical personnel started moving toward the ring, clearly concerned for Cena's well-being. At this point, everyone in the building, from the youngest fan to the most seasoned wrestling veterans, knew they were witnessing something that would be talked about for decades to come. This wasn't just a wrestling match anymore, it had become a public execution. And then came the 7th F5, the one that would cement this match in wrestling history forever. Lesnar pulled Cena's nearly unconscious body up one final time. The crowd was on their feet, not in excitement, but in complete shock at what they were witnessing. Some were cheering for the spectacle, others were genuinely concerned for Cena's safety. The tension in the arena was unlike anything anyone had ever experienced. When that 7th F5 connected, the sound it made was different from all the others. It was the sound of finality. The sound of a statement being made. The sound of John Cena's aura of invincibility being shattered into a million pieces. Cena lay motionless in the center of the ring as Lesnar finally went for the cover. The 3 count felt like a formality at that point. The real story wasn't who won, it was how decisively and brutally the victory had been achieved. But the aftermath was just as shocking as the match itself. Instead of celebrating like a typical victorious wrestler, Lesnar simply stood up, looked down at Cena's broken body, and walked out of the ring without any emotion whatsoever. No showboating, no playing to the crowd, just a cold, calculated killer who had completed his mission. The crowd sat in stunned silence as medical personnel rushed to check on Cena. For several minutes, he couldn't even sit up properly. The man who had built his career on never giving up, on overcoming impossible odds, had been reduced to a battered shell of his former self. What made this beating even more significant was the timing. This wasn't some random match on a throwaway episode of Monday Night Raw. This was a marquee event, with millions of people watching around the world. Brock Lesnar had chosen the biggest possible stage to send his message, and that message was received loud and clear. The wrestling world was never the same after that night. Suddenly, every superstar in the locker room had to reconsider what they thought they knew about competition at the highest level. If John Cena, could be dismantled so thoroughly, what did that mean for everyone else? Industry insiders immediately began speculating about what this meant for WWE's future. How do you rebuild a top star who's just been exposed so brutally? How do you maintain the illusion of competitive balance when one performer has just demonstrated such overwhelming dominance? But perhaps the most interesting aspect of this entire situation was how it changed the audience's perception of both wrestlers. Before this match, many fans had grown tired of John Cena's predictable victories and Superman-like ability to overcome any obstacle. But seeing him so helpless, so human, actually generated sympathy for him in a way that years of traditional booking never could. Meanwhile, Lesnar's stock skyrocketed to levels that seemed impossible to reach. He wasn't just a wrestler anymore, he was a force of nature, an unstoppable destroyer who operated by his own rules. The 7 F5s became legendary, referenced in wrestling discussions for years to come. Here's another question for the comments section. Do you think this level of dominance was good for WWE's overall product, or did it go too far in destroying the competitive balance? I'm genuinely curious about your thoughts on this. The ripple effects of this match extended far beyond just these two performers. Other wrestlers had to completely re-evaluate their approach when facing Lesnar. Traditional wrestling psychology went out the window because nobody wanted to end up like Cena did that night. Promoters around the world took notice as well. The match became a case study in how to create genuine shock value in an era when wrestling fans thought they'd seen everything. It proved that sometimes, the most effective storytelling comes not from elaborate plots or dramatic reversals, but from raw, uncompromising displays of dominance. The technical execution of each F5 was also worth noting. Lesnar didn't just perform the same move 7 times, each one was slightly different, showcasing different aspects of his incredible athleticism and strength. The first few were quick and explosive, demonstrating his speed and power. The later ones were more methodical, showing his ability to control the pace and psychology of the match. What really set this apart from other dominant performances in wrestling history was the genuine sense of danger it created. Unlike choreographed beatdowns that feel theatrical, this had an authenticity that made everyone in the arena genuinely concerned for Cena's well-being. That's incredibly difficult to achieve in modern professional wrestling. The broadcast team's reaction throughout the match was equally compelling. You could hear the shock and disbelief in their voices as each F5 connected. By the 6th and 7th F5s, they were genuinely struggling to find words to describe what they were witnessing. Their authentic reactions added another layer of realism to an already incredible situation. Social media exploded immediately after the match ended. Wrestling fans, casual viewers, and even mainstream sports media outlets were buzzing about what they'd just witnessed. The 7 F5s became an instant meme, but also a legitimate talking point about the evolution of professional wrestling entertainment. Perhaps most importantly, this match represented a changing of the guard in WWE. The era of John Cena's dominance was effectively ended in the most dramatic way possible, while Brock Lesnar's reign of terror was just beginning. It marked a shift toward more realistic, hard-hitting presentation that would influence WWE's direction for years to come. The psychological impact on both wrestlers' careers cannot be overstated. For Cena, it forced a complete reinvention of his character and approach. He could never again rely solely on his never-give-up persona because everyone had seen him completely overwhelmed and helpless. This actually made him a more interesting performer in the long run. For Lesnar, it established him as the most feared competitor in WWE. Every future match carried the implicit threat that he could unleash the same level of destruction at any moment. This made his appearances special events rather than routine matches, elevating his value and mystique exponentially. The match also highlighted the importance of legitimate fighting credentials in professional wrestling. Lesnar's background as a successful UFC heavyweight champion added a layer of authenticity that pure sports entertainment performers simply couldn't match. It raised questions about the future direction of the industry. From a business perspective, this match was a massive success. It generated enormous buzz, increased viewership for subsequent shows, and created a compelling narrative that drove storylines for months afterward. Sometimes, the most effective way to captivate an audience is to completely subvert their expectations in the most shocking way possible. So here's my final question for you: what other wrestling moments have shocked you as much as Brock Lesnar's 7F5s on John Cena? What matches or moments made you question everything you thought you knew about professional wrestling? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe if you want more deep dives into wrestling's most unforgettable moments. This wasn't just a match, it was a statement, a changing of the guard, and a reminder that in professional wrestling, anything can happen when you least expect it. The 7F5s will be remembered forever as the night John Cena's invincibility died and Brock Lesnar's legend was truly born.